holidays have come, and here's the bubble mint, as almost always the favourite amongst the channel, it seems. So I'm going to pop a couple of bits of this in, and we're going to be rambling today. So you probably already seen by the title of this video what it's about. Or the thumbnail, probably both. But today's ramble is kind of I guess a bit of a request. I've had requests in the past to do more about video games. Just rambling about them, I guess, among other things, but video games tends to be a popular one, which is kind of ironic because my video game and gameplay videos tend to be the worst in terms of viewership, because people like hearing about video games, just not actually watching them. They are obviously in ASMR, you should check them out, they're pretty good, if I say so myself. Now I get if it's not really your thing, but while the volume's quiet, you know, it's ASMR. Anyway, I digress. So today's little ramble, and I'll probably do more of these in the future, because I probably won't be satisfied by this video alone, but yeah, this particular ramble was just like me chatting about some of the more emotional moments in video games, like some of the moments I think have kind of caught me the most. I found like the most emotional when playing them. My D&D map is falling off the wall, which is great. That's always a great sign. Completely lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so it's more about moments I found like particularly emotional in video games. I've got a list of games on my screen that I thought might be worth maybe chatting about. Most of these are just games that I've played, but yeah. So I might scroll through them, but let's begin. Let's kick things off with a strong start. So I would say particularly a particularly emotional game throughout, I would really say full of gut punches, is The Last of Us, like the first one. Yeah, that I would say is probably like one of the most emotional games I've ever played, like the one that's really kind of hit me hard, made me feel things, and I love that about video games. I love like going on a separate ramble here, but like I love when people, I don't love this as sarcasm, I love when people talk about video games like they're not a real creative or like bit of art, because that's just so incorrect. That's why that's why the Last of Us TV show works so well, right? You can, like, just because it's a game doesn't mean that it's not art in and of itself. And it's certainly, that game is certainly better than a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows that I've watched, so anyway, I digress off that point. I played this on PS3, I believe was the first time I played it, and then when I bought my PS4, it came with the remaster for free. Like it came with it was like a box set. I think I got that, Uncharted 4, and like a driving game when I bought a Slim. And obviously there's now like a part 1 for the PS5, which is just like an update, I guess. I haven't played that version. I played The Last of Us a couple of times, I would say, like maybe a few times. Definitely once on PS3, once on PS4, I believe. I definitely know I had the PS3 disc. Don't know where it is though. I'm absolutely certain. Maybe I didn't. I don't honestly. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but I'm pretty sure I did. It doesn't really matter. That's inconsequential. So yeah, I would say that game is really, really like it's brutal. Emotionally, like obviously, I think it goes without saying in this video. There's going to be spoilers for the games. So if you don't want spoilers for any of the games, you're just going to have to skip through and hope you don't pick up on one, or just don't watch. But a lot of these games have been out for at least a while now. So The Last of Us just has so many moments, like when you meet the guy and his brother. Turns out the kid's been bitten, and you know he dies, and it's just like horrible. And then the older brother, like, you know, offs himself. That's like one of the first really, I would say, like really like gut punch moments. I think the other like protagonist in the beginning, I forget her name, but she's travelling with Joel at the beginning of the game. I think she, if I recall, she gets bit and they leave her behind or something along those lines. I really can't remember now. And I remember that being like, oh wow, people, you know, people that are connected are going to die. There's not a lot of plot armour for those NPCs. But I don't think I've really felt the same kind of like emotional weight. If you're wondering why I'm doing this, I'm just massaging, got a bit of pain in my ear. Yeah. Oh, that's made me lose my train of thought. But yeah, I would say like that moment didn't really catch me too much. It was the brothers thing that really solidified like, oh damn. And then of course, all the stuff that happens later on, like just throughout the rest of the game, is just very, very emotional, and it's really well done. Just expert story crafting there. And of course, the end is really difficult. You know, to go and save her. Though personally, you know, I stand with Joel on that. Like, that's just my opinion. At the end of the day, he doesn't want this girl to be cut open and killed. So he wants to try and save her. That is what it is. I haven't played the second one, never got around to it. I obviously know all the spoilers of it, but I would like to, you know, give it a go at some point. However, I know I'm not going to enjoy it as much as the first, purely because of, you know, the whole Joel thing. I do feel that character may have been done a little dirty there, but at the same time, like, I get it. I don't agree with any of the hate. Like, I love Critical Role, so Laura Bailey and Ashley Johnson, you know, love them to bits. And the fact that Laura Bailey got hate mail, just like, or like people like sending death threats and stuff, like, fills me with a visceral anger. And yeah, those people, if you send death threats to actors or voice actors, you are probably like the biggest scum on the earth. You know, maybe not the biggest, but definitely up there with them. If you were one of those that sent death threats, fuck off. I don't want you here. Not interested. Anyway, less of me antagonising you, and more about talking about the games. Yeah, so I haven't played the second one, so I don't really think I can attest to that. But I love the first. I've got the first season of The Walking Dead. Now that show is great up to a point. I stopped watching it at a certain point of Walking Dead, but I did play the first season of the game. I never played the latter ones, starting when oh my gosh, what's her name? The girl, Clementine. When she gets older, I haven't played them. I've only played the first one. But that ending, like, I mean, that whole game is filled with like emotional moments because it's like a zombie game. I guess any of those sort of post-apocalyptic games are quite intense. But yeah, at the end of that game, when you have to make the choice, like, oh wait, there's not really much of a choice because the guy's gonna die regardless. But Valentine has to shoot him. Like, it's really, really hard. That one, that one made me cry. That was a painful one. Talking of zombie games, I think Days Gone is similar in that regard. Not necessarily to the same level, but I feel like that game gets such a bad rap. I'm so glad it's getting love now, but I love Sam. I think Sam is great, the voice actor, and motion capture for that game. He is exceptional. He's one of the best voice actors out there. He's up there with the greats. And he plays the protagonist. I think his name's John, if I recall. I love that game. It's such an interesting concept. You're riding a motorbike around. It's so Daryl coded, especially when you unlock the crossbow, which I exclusively use in that game. But yeah, really, really great game. Like, big hordes of zombies. The first time, like, in a game, there's really been a horde of zombies that feels like a horde of zombies that you can actually kill, and you've got to be tactical about it. It's a great game. If you've not played Days Gone, absolutely should play it. But in addition to being a great zombie game and just an overall great open world game, it's got really good side quests, and like every side quest feels like it's got a story about it. It's got none of those like go and collect this thing and this thing and this thing. I mean, there's obviously quests that involve that sort of mechanic, but rather than like a quest book, what it has is like storylines, and it will be like every time you do a mission for a certain storyline, it will go up. And I love that way of storytelling. I think it's way more interesting to call quests storylines, or a journal to be like stories, and each character has like a storyline attributed to them, and it's really interesting, really, really well laid out. And some of them are really, really kind of like dark and emotional. There's one about a girl that I don't want to give too much away in case you haven't watched it. Sort of on the ground here. Oh yeah, I dropped something off of the side here and it's broken. Yeah, so there's one where this girl like runs away from home. She ends up in a cult, and then you can save her from the cult, and then she becomes like, I can't remember what happens to the rest of her, but like she's got this recurring storyline throughout the whole game, and it's really quite sad in some places. But anything that is post-apocalyptic, I think, generally lends itself to being quite emotional, because there's a lot of loss. There's a lot of just like falling on hard times and people having to make bad or hard decisions. There is a storyline where your protagonist, his best friend, is, well, let's just say he doesn't feel like he has a lot to live for and wants to act on that feeling. And like it's quite hard, and like it deals with a lot of really interesting subjects. I love the game. I think it's incredible, as you can clearly tell. So yeah, you should go and check that out. The Mass Effect series, like, I mean, there's lots of like just individual stories that are quite emotional in there. The fact that you can kill off characters, or like have these really deep storylines and quests that transpire throughout the games, like it's really interesting. For example, in say, I think it's in the third one, if I recall. Maybe it's in the third one I'm thinking of. So obviously, like, you can kill off characters, and those characters can then have storylines in the other games, but if you kill them off, you don't get to see them. Like at the end of the second Mass Effect, you like so many of your like main characters can just die in the big attack on the collector base, and then in the third game, like they can just like be they're gone, and that obviously influences the story. But I'd say Mass Effect has a lot of opportunity for some great emotional storytelling. in particular, I think of like the ending, obviously, of the second and the third game, big decisions. End of the third is like, I think the end of the third game, regardless of what you choose, is emotional because of how long you've spent playing the game. You've journeyed with all of these characters over the course of 3 individual games, and if you were playing them when they released, you would be effectively feeling a sense like you've been there for years, right? If you've waited years for the games to come out, it can be really emotional. It's like saying goodbye to characters, and honestly, I found it really hard to jump back into playing Mass Effect. I said to myself, every year I want to do just to play through the game, try and get a different ending, try and do like different things, see what changes. But I don't want to sully the memory of the game that I had, if that makes sense, because it was so like, God, like even thinking about it now is just like so powerful. All the little storylines that merge together, all of them coming to a head in the third game, where like I think in the second game I romanced Garrus, and then in the third game, you've been away from each other, and then like meeting back up with him, and it's like, was that just a fling? And like those, I think the romantic relationships add a weight to it that makes you feel way more connected to the game. And like the final goodbye with Garrus, like had me choked up, especially when I knew I wasn't going to be returning. That was hard. In the third game, saying goodbye to the guy that you meet at basically the end of the second game, like the assassin. I can't remember his name, if I'm honest. But he has this like, he is dying, and in the third game, he dies before he gets to see whether the galaxy was saved from the Reapers. And that moment in the hospital was really, really kind of powerful. And there's just so many moments like that, seeing Jack with all the kids, if she survives the second game, and you make the right choices, seeing her looking after all these kids, even like the snippets at the end, like the choices, do I send them to go and be like helpers in the background and like not contribute as much to the war effort, which means it's harder to get the good ending, or do I send them to the front lines and get them like have more war effort because he's powerful, like bionics are in the front line, and it makes it easier to defeat the Reapers and get the better ending. But if you do send them to the front line, they all die, and at the end it's Jack like looking with like a bunch of graves, and seeing those endings where like, because I sent them to be like a support, and so she stood there with them all as a family, and there's just these moments that are really emotional because your decisions have weight. So I would say like Mass Effect is probably up there with one of the most emotional games of all time, purely because the journey you go on, all of the decisions that you make, the player autonomy is disgustingly like important. Oh my god, how could I forget the end of the second game with Mordin? Is it in the third game? Is it the third game that they do? Yeah, I think it's the third. Yeah, of course it is, because you get him in the second game. You can learn about the research. I destroyed the research, which meant that Eve died, and all of the people didn't, like all of the Krogans, like had less fertility or something along those lines, or like there was like more issues there. I don't think Rex liked me in the end either, but I managed to like persuade him down, I believe. Yeah, so there's that. And when he goes up and like when he sings the song again, and he dies, and you can save him, but it basically sacrifices the Krogan, and like it's really bad. the amount of choices in this game are ridiculous. And then, I will move on to another game in a moment, but the other one being like the Citadel DLC at the end. That was hard. That one was painful because the game is coming to an end. And when I was doing the Citadel DLC, I basically had done everything else in the game, and at that point decided, okay, now I'm gonna do the Citadel DLC right at the end, and wow, just one of the best DLCs of all time. It doesn't have any like groundbreaking mechanics. It's not like complicated quest line. It is just you get to hang out with your crew one last time before the end of the game, and then have a party, talk with them, let them all interact and mingle with each other. It is just incredible. And then I found like some voice notes from Morden, and I remember just sobbing at the end of that DLC. Oh my god, I was a wreck. And I think that's probably why I find it hard to go back and play that game, because for me that was the moment you really said goodbye. And I've said goodbye to those characters, and they're kind of a memory now. God, I must have gone on about Mass Effect for like nearly 10 minutes, if not longer, at this point. But I mean, it deserves it. If you've never played Mass Effect, you're making a mistake. You have to. I'm gonna make Katie play at some point. I'm gonna just say to her, like, just trust me, like, play it on easy if you want, it doesn't matter. Just trust me. This will be quite possibly one of the best gaming experiences you will ever have. Jeez, got me thinking about my Mass Effect times. Got me all emotional. Yeah, that was an emotional one. In that same vein, I'm not going to touch on it as much, but like Dragon Age, I've only played Origins. I started playing the DLC Awakened, or Awakening, but I never ended up finishing it. I need to get back into it and finish it, but I never did that, so I've never played or finished 2 or Inquisition, but I really would love to get into that. I think it's like very much the same vein. Make those choices, they influence the game, and I romanced. Who did I romance? I can't remember now. I romanced the Bard in the first game in Origins. My character ended up surviving. It was the other member of the whatever they're called. I really can't even remember any of their names now. The Grey something, right? He ended up dying and sacrificing himself, and because I said like, oh, I'm not going to make him have a child with this person. I think that just feels wrong. He was going to become the next king, and then he sacrificed himself, so now there's just a queen. However, my game had bugged. I'm pretty sure, or something had gone wrong, because I did the DLC. Was doing the DLC Awakening for Origins, and when the queen arrived, like, my character was like asking about where the other guy was, but he had died in the game before. It was weird. Or like she'd mentioned him being back at home, and it was like weird. But like that character that you can kill off in the first game could turn up as the king in the third game, I think, or the second or third game. Probably the second game. I don't really know the timeline, but like that's crazy to me. What happens if you kill him off? I love those sorts of games, things where your decisions have repercussions. I love Baldur's Gate to do something like that. If they did a fourth game, which they won't, obviously, because they've said they're not, but if they ever did, it'll be cool. But there's just so many permeations or permutations. I actually don't remember which one is the right word there, but or permutations, whatever it is. That it would be very difficult to do that. fantasy games now. The Witcher 3. The end of that game is very similar. I think what you're getting an idea of here is games where you have to make choices are the most like emotional ones, generally because you are actively involved in the decision making. I guess roping into that would be also something like Cyberpunk 2077, and particularly the what's it called, Phantom Liberty DLC, which really has quite an emotional ending depending on which way you go. When you give the player the agency to be involved in the story, they're more likely to be emotionally invested. So when they can adapt or change how the story goes, when they can influence the end of that narrative, but rather than just be, passively watching, I feel like they tend to be much more emotionally invested. At least that's how I feel. So yeah, the end of that of Witcher 3 is particularly emotional. I've heard the end of the Blood and Wine is, but I've not actually got to the end of Blood and Wine. I've not finished the DLC. I've got so many games I've got to finish. I'm trying to finish everything that's on my PS3 right now. PS3, damn. Living in the early 2010s. Yeah, I need to finish every game I've got on my PS5 right now downloaded, which includes The Witcher 3, before I start like playing anything else, because I have this tendency, as I'm sure many of you can probably relate to, starting a game, getting through it, maybe even getting near the end, but just never finishing it. I had to force my way to finish the end of The Witcher 3 main story, because I never finished it. And I think I remember seeing a statistic where CD Projekt Red said they'd shortened the story of Cyberpunk 2077, specifically because a large portion of players for Witcher 3 never finished the main story. And so I don't want that statistic to exist anymore. I don't want to be part of that statistic, namely because I felt Cyberpunk was so short. What other stuff have I got on my list here? I've already talked about Dragon Age. Ghost of Tsushima, I would say, again, is one of those stories very much similar to Last of Us. It's not a choice-based story, not really. There's a few choices you can make, but it's really not that meaningful. You're more of a passive protagonist in the sense, or at least you are yourself a passive player. You don't influence the story, you just play through it. But the end of that game is quite emotional, especially the end duel. I remember like really putting it off, and like I just wanted them to like talk it out, but I knew that's just not how it was going to be, and he had to kill his uncle. And that duel at the end is just really painful, especially when they're talking as they fight. It was, I shed a tear in that fight. It's, it is an emotional one. But that is a beautiful game. That, I would say Ghost of Tsushima is as close to perfection as a game could be, in my opinion. What else have we got? Oh, that reminded me, I wanted to mention another game that was similar in my feelings like that would be the Spider-Man games, specifically like the newer PlayStation ones. I just love the story of them. I like Spider-Man, my favourite superhero, always has been, always probably will be. Like so many people out there, I imagine I'm not that original. I'm not original, and I'm not afraid to say it. But because of that, I love Spider-Man, love playing the games, and so the stories in those games, just love them. I love playing it, love fighting the villains in there, and I would say, like, particularly the end of Spider-Man 2, like the stuff with Venom, with Harry, It's really well done. I know a lot of people didn't like Harry being Venom and not Eddie Brock, but ultimately, like, let the game be original, man. Like, just let them be original. It doesn't make a difference. And yeah, when they're talking and he's like saying he was there for him, and like Harry's like, I was alone. Really painful. I loved back in the day. When I say back in the day, I mean like what? What was it? A year ago ish. I actually don't remember. I'm trying to recall. Maybe it was somewhere along that line. But like when it came out, all the edits. Oh my gosh. Like, and it's just got and all it is like the image of like Venom and Peter like looking at each other in that last fight, and then clips from the fight, or like clips from like the sound bites from the fight where they're like, you know, talking about Harry's mother and stuff, and it's just, that was really emotional. But any story game like that tends to be that way. Detroit Become Human. Again, it mixes both of what I've just said there, like that sort of like passive environment, in the sense that, you know, it's basically like choose your own adventure. You just choose the dialogue options and do some quick time events, but you do make very distinct decisions, and there's so much agency in that game, obviously, and it could go any route. But like, I'm a sucker for like a revolution or like an oppression story. And damn if that game ain't emotional. I think if you don't cry at that game, you're inhuman. Truly, you're not. That is just one of the best games. I feel like I want. It's like another game I want to make Katie play. But here's the thing, like, I'd love to like sit down and make her play it, but at the same time, when I say make her play, like, we sit down and watch and play it with her. But at the same time, I think a lot of these games, when they deserve to be a personal journey, like playing them and enjoying playing them and doing it on your own, letting yourself take it in, not feeling the pressure of anyone else there. So, yeah, I might maybe recommend it to play. But that's definitely up there. Alright, well, I think I've rambled on long enough. There's probably plenty more games out there that would be like emotional games. So if you want me to talk a little bit more like this on some games, let me know. I like your requests, guys. It's nice to know that you have like, you know, general topics that you want me to talk about. It's good to know like those sorts of things where you've told me about giving opinions, you've told me about video games and all that stuff. But they are very like general topics, and sometimes that's, you know, that's good because it means I could just talk about anything. But also sometimes it's good if you've got like specific requests, like for example today, like specifically talking about games that I thought had like an emotional weight to them thing. Once I remember like going, oh yeah, I feel emotional playing that game. So if you have any like specific topics like that, or like what are my favourite fighting games, what driving games have I ever played, or do I play any sports games, etc. Then, you know, they're also good things. I'm not criticising your requests, but if you do have any general or any like specific things like that, they are always good to drop in the comments, because that way I know something specific that I can do a video about. Just because sometimes it's a bit of a wonder wall, you know, like if I go and we ramble about video games, sometimes it's difficult to go, okay, but where do I start? What do I go for? What are you interested in actually hearing me ramble about? And I know I could probably ramble about anything you guys would be, you know, listening in, because it's about the sounds, right? But if the topic is interesting, it pulls you in as well, I guess. So, yeah. If you have any further requests, please drop them in the comments below. I'd appreciate that, and get as specific as you like with that. But if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like this, remember you can always like the video and let me know that way. Lets me know, keeps me aware that these are the types of videos you want to see. If you're not subscribed, you should do that. You made it to the end, you might as well click the bell icon as well, and do that if you're subscribed and you haven't, because YouTube never shows videos up. Really, it's rare for me to appear on your feed, I'd imagine. So if you click the bell icon, you'll be able to be notified when I upload, and then you can get a good night's sleep, you know. What else? The videos, of course, up alongside, as always. The videos appear on the side of the screen, so go check them out, see what you like, what you fancy from them.